Hello fellow Tenno and welcome to Frame Thoughts, a show which normally is a lot more edited than this, but today I feel it's important that we sit down and talk face to face. You see, with Fortuna on the horizon and the upcoming mainline update shipping the login changes, we need to have a serious conversation about Warframe. That means not just me and the developers, but also you, the viewer. If you enjoy this game, we definitely have to talk. Now I'm sure you've heard all about it by this point, but just so I know that we're all operating with the same level of knowledge, Warframe recently announced that they will be changing the way to acquire the rewards you get from logging in. This particularly concerns the milestones, which includes weapons like the Star and Prime mods that are now locked behind hundreds of days of logging in. These changes should make important items much more easily accessible to all players. However, on the other hand, we're also dealing with all the players that have been logging in for over 1,000 days that are now feeling cheated out of their efforts. In response to those concerns, DE made a few adjustments, which I will link in the description down below, but also said the following. We've made it only slightly more flexible while still respecting the core need to log in frequently. Personalization is a huge part of Warframe and we think that this changed the daily tribute system to better reflect that. We've just now done it in a new iteration that still respects the time investment overall, and it's coming in the next mainline update. Still respecting the time investment overall? How? Via scaling? A system that should have been in place from the start? I mean, come on guys, you're gonna have to do better than that. But, okay, I get it. Let's just agree to disagree on that point and move on to the most important part of this whole situation. And that is that by and large, we as both the dev team and the community have been missing the bigger picture, resulting in Warframe having content droughts, remaining stagnant in numbers, and overall not living up to the potential that it has. I understand this is a big topic, so let me break it down for you so that we can work together on improving this game. To begin with, let's jump back to the login system. I think it's first and foremost very important to all realize that a 500-day requirement on a weapon like the Star is just objectively ridiculous. You see, based on my experience, an average casual player spends about 3 months playing a game, and before you say it, I have definitely seen players get all the weapons and warframes within that time frame. Given that, it makes no sense to put progression content like the Star behind a time gate that has nothing to do with skill and takes the player about 8 times longer than they would normally spend on the game. Long story short, these items should have never been in there. But this is the thing, the weapons themselves were never the issue. There are much more important underlying structures at play here, which consciously or not made people rightfully passionate about this change, and structures that I strongly believe DE has not even come close to respectfully addressing. So let's take that apart. The login system, like every other part of the game, is built on a set of psychological and sociological structures that allow us to play the game and enjoy playing it. The psychological part exists in the expectations that you have within your mind of how the world reacts to your actions. This is what gets you to want to play the game because you expect that by putting in a certain amount of time, you will be rewarded with that new warframe, a higher rank, whatever. Now the interesting thing is that this is not just in your mind, it also actually works. We've all agreed to act out according to these expectations, so they're in line with the sociological structures that allow the world, and in this case Warframe, to function. Think of it as a contract. You agree with DE that if you put in 5 minutes of your time into a survival, you get a rotation A reward. Because of that guarantee, you can go into that survival knowing that your time will be rewarded. That very same contract has also been at play with the login system, getting players to log in every single day, having the assurance that they will be rewarded as agreed. Now though, after 3 years, DE comes around and changes up their end of the contract, making items easier to get, and decimating the structures on which people have acted for years in one single blow. The impact of this should never be underestimated, because what this does is make the contract uncertain. And if the contract is uncertain, why bother doing anything at all? Why bother logging in if I can just complain and get my reward? Why bother doing survivals if I can just complain and get my reward? It's an issue that strikes the core foundations of this game. And that is not all. In the current state that Warframe is in, acquiring a high login reward was one of the only few ways for people to show their investment into the game, as everything else is so easily acquirable. So given the way that last part to newer players leaves very little to show for all these days of logging in. I mean, the armor is nice, but it's by far not 1,000 days nice. Now to that you might say, well, at least you're getting scaling. But honestly, get out with scaling. Scaling is something that should have been in there from the start, and as far as I've seen, your rewards scale with a rate of 600% at day 1000, which may seem nice at first, until you realize that your inventory scales by much more than 600%, so it in the end means very, very little. Respecting the overall time investment, I don't think so. But then why is this login stuff also important? Well, like how most people MDE have only put their focus on the weapons and the scaling, we have not been addressing the much more important structures that are at play here. And this is a very common and dangerous trend within the last 1 to 2 years of Warframe. If you don't know, Warframe built its community and gained its success in large part due to having frequent updates and events that kept the players active. Yes, Steve, you even said it yourself in the NoClip documentary.
So why are we going to fail? Well, because the game can't look this good and update as often as you need to build your community.
So then why is it that we're finding ourselves in 2018 with almost no content to show for it? As far as I can tell, we're now adopting a schedule of 1 content release and 1 quest released every single year. Which, for a game like Warframe, I'm sorry to say, but it is a huge problem. In the last months, we've even gone back to the concurrent player base equal to before the planes released last year. That is not good. And the reason why people don't stick around is very, very simple. This game, yes, Warframe, has got almost no difficulty at all. Think about this for a second. When was the last time that you swapped out your weapon builds because you went from fighting the Grineer to fighting the Corpus? Well, you don't. You don't need to. Even the supposed hardest parts of the game, like the sorties, do not require a specialized build or much knowledge at all. Warframe does not entice people to learn its game mechanics, as every single mission can be done with average kills. It doesn't teach players how mechanics like spawn rates or kills per second work by putting special weapons behind really difficult missions so that they're forced to learn the process. No, even if you have that knowledge, it is not rewarded at all. Look at the content like the Plains of Eidolon, which averages around level 30 to 40, or elite alerts that have been lowered to start at level 60 instead of level 80. Add to that the content that we are getting is just not good. Yes, as a developmental feat, I admit that Plains were absolutely amazing, but the implementation of them was below poor. I am still waiting to this day for the quest that finally tells me why this node was suddenly here. Also, about a year after their release, we have never heard about the ghouls more than that they pop up. But we're still clueless about who or what they are, unless you decide to read these codex fragments. Now you might say that Fortuna will be the update that will make it all better, that will get players to play again and give the game exposure, but that's honestly quite short-sighted. As far as we've seen about Fortuna in the past dev streams, there's been only hoverboarding and hunting, which is all great and fun minigames, but that is what they are. Just minigames. We have not seen any real meat of the Fortuna content, which may very well be a sign that DE is holding it off as a surprise. But then honestly, you are selling the entire update with a year of content rot on the promise of a potential surprise? I mean, the effect that it has is that everyone starts to imagine by themselves what that surprise could be, and starts to raise their expectations to a level that you can never meet. So then, how do we improve? Well, that task is up to you, me, and everyone else within the Warframe community. Warframe is an absolutely amazing game, with great devs that we've come to know and love. However, we have to remain critical of what they do. We need to push them to do better, and always be on top of their game. The way that we can get them to revisit a weapon nerf that we feel is unjust, that is absolutely impressive. DE listens. However, where we're keen to react to our favorite weapon changing, we're apparently fine with seeing no content for weeks in the dev streams. Skins, minigames such as Framefight or even the Jupiter reworks, they're great, but they're no real progression content. Efforts that do not help the bigger picture. In the case of Jupiter, I agree, it looks absolutely amazing, but high-level players still have no reason to go there, and the new player experience is so broken in terms of the quests and the tutorials that other improvements there would make a lot more sense. We have lowered the bar so much that we are buying Prime Access 4 times a year for the price of 2 AAA games. And where these games give you hours of content, animation, and gameplay, we haven't even seen a Prime Access trailer since Hydroid? Now, I'm not saying that DE is fully to blame for this. We are too, for letting this happen and not putting our foot down. We need to stop nitpicking and start looking at pushing the narrative. Warframe is in a league of its own. Unlike Destiny, DE doesn't have a publisher that needs to conform to. It doesn't have a lore that's set in stone. Unlike Anthem, it has existed for over 5 years and built its game mechanics, community, and universe a long time ago already. In fact, Warframe was first. Warframe, with 38 million players, is no longer an underdog. We are leading the industry. so we should start to act like it. Warframe is in this unique situation where it can pretty much go wherever it wants, and it's already established. We do not need the big releases that look perfect for the press, but cause massive content droughts. If there's any game out there that Warframe can take example to in how it develops, looks no further than Fortnite, and try to see how we can move to that level. But for that, we need you, DE, to let us know that you're aware of the bigger picture. Because right now, I'm not too sure about that. And we, as a community, need to be their quality control, their inspiration, and their support. Critical support at that. Warframe is an amazing game with great potential, and if it were to ever go down, we'd all be to blame for it. Also, Mogamu and LifeofRio have made some incredible videos regarding this topic. Make sure you do check them out. But also, in the words of Philip DeFranco, that's just my opinion, but I want this to be a conversation. So let's talk together in the comments down below. Thanks for watching.